Welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. My name is Jamie Irvin, and today we are live. Did you know that we produce a weekly podcast? We would love you to go over to heavydutypartsreport.com to follow the show for free. And all of our live broadcasts are sponsored by the podcast. So check out our podcast and you can do that. You can follow it for free at heavydutypartsreport.com. We have convenient links for podcast players, YouTube. And if you don't want to do any of that, you can always sign up to our weekly email. I'll send you an email and you can watch all of the broadcasts or listen to them right on heavydutypartsreport.com. So if you're responsible for, it's a live broadcast. So just before I get into our subject today, if you want to comment or ask a question to myself or our guest today, we would love to have you part of the conversation. Feel free to do so. We'll try to bring you in like this. Do so early in the show, as sometimes we get comments right at the end as we're logging off and we don't have time to incorporate you into the broadcast. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, if you're responsible for maintaining commercial fleets, then you have to care about warranties. And today we're going to provide you with basically the 3 reasons why you need better warranty tracking. And so I invited Renaldo Adler, head of software engineering connected maintenance at Trimble Transportation, to join us today. Now, Renaldo has 36 years of experience in the transportation industry. He's focused on helping organizations streamline the maintenance process by increasing cost control, reducing downtime. You hear about that on this show an awful lot, and improving vehicle and equipment lifespans. And of course, warranty is a big part of that subject. So, Renaldo, welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. So glad to have you here. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to doing this here.
So we're going to talk about warranty tracking. Let's talk about the issue, first of all, in terms of why commercial fleets and vehicle owners need better warranty tracking. I mean, warranties are there, but why do they need to track them in a more efficient way?
Well, first of all, it's, if you're filing warranty claims, it's like getting free money. The manufacturers plan on having to pay a certain amount of money out for warranty claims. So if you're not filing those claims and you're doing the work yourself, or you're using aftermarket parts that have a warranty, if you're not tracking that, then you're just leaving money behind. From an OEM standpoint, people say it's as much as 3 to 6 or even more percent of the cost of the equipment set aside to reimburse for warranty claims.
3 to 6%, really, that much of the total value of the equipment.
Correct.
That's more than I would have.
Now, that's what some people say.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get arguments from the OEMs on that.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's exactly what I was just going to ask you. So does that span when someone is estimating 3 to 6%, that's the OEM warranty on the truck or the equipment, and also any aftermarket warranties on replacement parts? That's kind of like the whole picture.
Correct. It's the life of the vehicle.
Okay.
It's not, for the first 3 years or so. It's kind of the life of the vehicle. What you can expect to get back in warranty if you really do a good job, or what they set aside as a potential that they'll have to pay out. This is taking money out of their pocket, and it's free money for the fleets if you can get warranty money back, or it reimburses you for the labor, or if you're dealing with parts, you get those parts back and various things. The better job you do at it, the more money you can recoup and lower the cost of it operating that piece of equipment.
And that's really what it's all about, right? It's the total cost. It's not just the purchase price. It's what does it cost you to run that equipment for the lifetime of the vehicle. So parts, labor, total cost of operation, lowering that on the lifespan 3 to 6%. I mean, this is compelling reasons that companies want to track their warranties more efficiently. If we kind of flip that around, what would be the economic impact to a fleet if they fail to do this in an efficient manner? So let's talk a little bit more about how that's going to impact the fleet's overall profitability.
Well, it's going to drive up their cost per mile. So they're competing against somebody else that's reducing their cost per mile. If you extend this out over the per mile, what you could save or what you could spend, but more they're spending, there's the impact. Margins are so small already on the revenue per mile and so forth. So why not try to reduce your operating expenses as much as you can? If I can save some money over here, or if I have a group of vehicles that all seem to have this problem, why not get it fixed for free? Why incur that expense and just drive up my cost to maintain my equipment? And the guy down the road may be doing it, and he's getting better margins. He's making more money.
Which then if
So
you look at the long term impact of that, you have two fleets competing in the same market for the same business. One of them is doing this efficiently, lowering their total cost per mile. So every mile driven is more profitable. The other one is less profitable. That has an exponential impact in the macro, in the long term, because as one business has more assets and more resources, they're going to be able to capture more business. That's going to accelerate their growth. While on the other side, you're going to be falling farther and farther behind as time goes on. And as time goes on, it's going to make it more difficult for you to compete, to the point where you might not be able to compete at all. So this is a big issue. And of course, warranties is only one component of that total cost of operation and cost per mile, but it's a big part of that if we're talking 3 to 6%, like you talked about at the top of the show.
correct. And it's not only the part, the part may be under warranty, but the labor that you expense to put that part on or take it off if you're fixing that vehicle yourself. The aftermarket area is a big area where those parts fail. You put a new part in. The other thing that's going on is, there's this whole supply chain problem with trucks and so forth. So people are keeping trucks longer. So what does that mean? Those trucks are older, they're breaking down. You're probably replacing those parts the second time and so forth. So now, how do I know that part failed before and I want to capture it and I want to file that aftermarket warranty? The OEM is pretty straightforward, but everything else gets more complicated.
Right. After that first 3 to 5 years, when the OE warranty comes off, it's a different game. And I've heard, I've sold parts for a long time, and I've heard many people say that, aftermarket warranties on labor is kind of a joke. Some companies have obviously better warranties than others, but if you're not tracking warranties properly, then you're going to miss out on the opportunities to, let's say, recoup labor costs. Uh, for example, we just had American Radiator on the show not that long ago, and they were talking about how they were one of the few companies in the aftermarket that had a labor rate. But if you're not tracking it properly, you might miss out on recouping some of that expense by asking for that labor back. You might only get the part. So let's talk about how to track warranties properly. And this is going to kind of get into the solution that your company offers. So, like, fill me in. How should companies be tracking their warranties properly?
Okay, great. So we look at it in a couple of ways. One is the OEM warranty. That's the 3 to 5 that you mentioned. That one's easy. That I know that truck's new. I know it's 3 years old or so forth. So that's pretty easy to know that that vehicle is under warranty. I can take it to the OEM. They can fix it. I don't have a bill. Some people are authorized to do their own warranty work. Well, if they don't file for it, then they don't get the reimbursement for that warranty on those vehicles. The other one gets into the extended warranty. I bought an extended warranty for the drivetrain, for the engine, and so forth. To be able to track that, that gets harder. You need a computer system to let you know, hey, you've got an extended warranty on this drivetrain, and now you have an issue with it, or this transmission, engine, and the list goes on. So, and those all have different periods. You may have 6 years on one or unlimited on another. So how do you know? What do you do when something fails on those components? So that's where a system helps, because now it says, hey, the engine is under warranty for this period and you're within the miles. So therefore, let's file a claim. Let's go back to the OEM, or the extended warranty is under Detroit or somebody else, and file that warranty claim with them. So that's the second area we focus on. But the big area is really that aftermarket parts, especially as you deal with the older vehicles or ones that now you're keeping longer because you've extended your trade cycle. How do I keep up with when did I replace that alternator? Oh, I've replaced it again. I've got hundreds or thousands of pieces of equipment. It's really hard to manage that and keep up with it unless I have a computer system to say, hey, you already replaced that part. So that's the
I
first
sorry
part
to
of it.
interrupt, Ronaldo, but you triggered a thought in my mind, and I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm a little hard of hearing. I'm not sure if we're just having
Okay.
a problem with the microphone, but I just need you to speak up a little bit. But
Okay. No problem.
yeah, thanks. But what that triggered in my mind was the situation where you're buying large number of the same make and model is very different than most of the fleets that are keeping their trucks longer, that have such a mixed group of equipment. I mean, they're buying used trucks, they're buying some new trucks, they're keeping them longer. All of a sudden, and maybe they serve 3 or 4 different vocations, so they've got such a mix, and it's a real true all makes kind of situation. And I can see that if you aren't tracking when things are purchased, and then with aftermarket, you might be buying from 4 or 5 suppliers. And now with e-commerce, you're not only just buying from the local people, you're buying from people who are offering e-commerce and national. So to keep track of all that information, especially when you get it up into dozens or hundreds of pieces of equipment, I see why that is such an important part to keeping track and being able to make sure you reclaim everything. So how does your system work? How does it allow them to enter all that information?
Okay. So that you're bringing up a great point and you picked up on it. How do we know when we replace that alternator? The next time we replace that alternator, it's very likely it's not going to have the same part number. It may be from a different manufacturer. How do you know that that's the same part? So our system relies on the ATA VMRS codes.
Okay.
Right? For an example, an alternator is an 031-001-001. All alternators have that same VMRS code. So when you replace part A with part B, you know, the computer doesn't know it's the same part unless you have some kind of link like that to say, hey, you already replaced this part, and this part had a warranty for a year or 100,000 miles or 50,000 miles, whatever the period is. We're able to capture that and flag that and say, hey, here's a potential warranty claim based on the VMRS code. Without that, it's even more difficult because now you have to keep up with substitute part numbers and superseded part numbers, and the list goes on. It's impossible to track unless you have something like the VMRS code to link those parts together.
So you got in a situation. I put an alternator in at the truck is 6 years old. It has 450,000 miles on it. I put that alternator in. I put that VMRS code. 72,000 miles later, the truck's back in the shop with an alternator problem, and it is under warranty. So because the part number is different, no longer matters because the VMRS code creates that consistency in our data.
Exactly, exactly. And now you have the problem of how do I identify? Who goes in and says, the alternator's an 031-001-001? How does that happen? So one thing we're building is what we call the Trimble Parts Network, and it's really a crowdsourced system where everybody feeds to it. So if somebody comes out with a new part, we have a governance group that assigns that VMRS code to that part. So now everybody benefits from it. So it only has to be coded one time. And then when these parts are used, we can automatically assign those numbers, and people aren't having to go through their inventory and figure out what the correct code is. It's going to be a huge savings for the fleet setting up the systems or using systems because it builds on itself. As fleets add parts, put the code in there, it gets reviewed by our governance group and says, yep, that's the correct code for an alternator. And it becomes part of our master database we have out there. Just part numbers and what their VMRS codes are. I'm not doing anything more than just trying to establish an alternator is an 031-001-001. And then that will be across the industry. So, And then
Yeah.
the other side benefit for that is really when you start benchmarking and looking across the whole scope of the world, everybody's using that same number. So everybody calls an alternator an alternator.
A starter, whatever part it is,
Exactly.
it gets its own
Exactly.
standardized code, right? So
Exactly.
what is the cost of setting up this tracking to the fleet? Obviously there's a cost to using your software, but then there's also the cost of actually inputting the information. So just on like an average cost, and then what kind of length of time do you see average fleets before they're getting like a positive return on investment when they set up this system?
It's usually, well, I'll start with the cost. The first cost is some kind of software. Preferably it'd be our software, but it would be some kind of software to help track this. Um, what we found, the fleets that are most successful with filing warranty and managing warranty are the ones that establish somebody to be the warranty administrator. So it's a person, it's a body, but that's their job to manage that warranty. Right? They review the repairs that we flag, and they look at them to make sure that they have the proper documentation on it. You hear people talk about the three C's: call, complaint, cause, and correction. Make sure that's on the warranty claim. Yeah. I actually say there's a fourth one, which is called comments, the fourth C. The better you can document what you did and why it failed and what's going on, the better chance you will have of being able to file that and recoup that money. So if you have a person that's working with your suppliers or your manufacturers and also your technicians to marry that data together and provide what's needed, you have a better chance and you recoup more money. Um, the
So
other one is really management of those parts. I take that alternator off or that starter off. I don't want the technician to throw it in the dumpster because the OEM may want it back. The manufacturer may want that part back. So being able to tag that part, we'll print out tags that says this part's under warranty. You put it on the shelf, you file the claim. If they don't want it back, you throw it in the dumpster. If they want it back, you put it in the box. You can say?
So I've been in that role at a manufacturing level where I've processed all the
Yeah.
warranties coming in, and that failure analysis is such an important part from the manufacturer's perspective because we want to see trends. We want to see if this is
Yeah.
happening because of a environmental issue or a use issue, or if it's actually a fault with our manufacturing process. We want to figure out what's going on, because even if it has nothing to do with our manufacturing process, maybe the environment that the vehicles are working in is creating a scenario where we need to reverse engineer why this component is failing. So it might meet OEM specifications, but now that it's in the real world, we need that data to be able to make updates. I've also processed warranties when I've sold parts for a distribution company. And I can tell you, having that person at the customer's location to talk to, that dedicated person, it goes a long way to being able to make sure that these situations are solved properly, that things are processed properly, and that, that everything is done in a timely manner. The last thing anybody wants is 9 months later, we're still trying to figure out a warranty. By that time, we've spent so much time and labor on it, might as well just write the credit because it's costing everybody extra money.
Exactly. And that's your biggest cost is really that person to help manage it. But the money you recoup will more than offset the cost of that person and
So
the relationship he has
yeah,
with who you're filing with.
yeah, the relationship, it goes a long way to even facilitating additional sales to that fleet, because when you have that good working relationship, then fleets have a confidence level with you as a supplier, and so then they're going to be more likely to buy more of your products going forward. So I was just going to talk a little bit about return on investment with the kind of an average of what you've seen. How quickly, once a fleet institutes this system, are they able to get into that positive ROI? Is it a few months, a year? Like, what's the usual time frame?
It's probably in the 6 month range. If you're doing a good job at it, it's probably 6 months. Part of what we need is, especially on the aftermarket side, is you need that repair history from when it broke the first time. So those may take longer before you recoup any sort of investment because it really needs to break twice. So if that part's breaking twice in 6 months, well, that's not as good. And so it also depends on how much effort you put into putting some history in of prior repairs and prior issues you had on that. So, but 6 months from just the basic OEM extended type warranty, and then the aftermarket will take longer for a longer period of time because it just needs a history to feed it.
This is kind of a question that I've started asking people recently because so much is changing in our industry that we sometimes forget to talk about the things that are going to stay the same. So technology is changing, trucks and trailers are changing. What's going to stay the same, especially related to warranty?
Well, great question. And the one thing that's going to stay the same is things are going to break. Things are going to continue to break. There's going to be different things. If you go back over time, the things that are breaking now is mainly around new technology. It's the after treatment, it's the DPF, it's the new technology things. The engine itself is pretty solid. It has, I don't know how many years of technology in it. The core engine isn't failing. It's all the new technology, all electronics and things that are being put on that vehicle that haven't been hardened. Those things are going to continue to break until they become hardened. Now, hopefully, it won't take years upon years, but it will take time for people to figure out what's going on and make those parts better. Go back and do those failure analysis. Why does this part keep failing?
So with
So
the
that will stay the same.
Yeah, with the I was just going to say, with the acceleration of technology, it's like we're just opening Pandora's box, because once this stuff gets out into the field and starts, it's not like work trucks don't work in tough conditions. It's like that's the only place they work in usually. So
Yeah.
warranty is going to become more of an issue as time goes forward, not less.
Correct. And another thing that's coming into play as we have technician shortages and so forth going on in individual shops, the fleets are outsourcing more of their repairs. So I'm doing more outsourced repair. Well, how do I track the warranty when I outsourced it? I took that vehicle out, I had it serviced somewhere, and now 11 months later that part fails again, or that whatever they worked on fails. How do I capture that? So you need the system to capture those type things too, of the external repairs. When you take your truck somewhere to be serviced because it broke down on the road, there's a warranty period that comes with that repair. So, they may have put a bad part on that failed again. They may have not done things right. How do you flag that down the road? Say, hey, I need to go back to this supplier that fixed that vehicle 11 months ago or a month ago. So that's one thing that's going to change, is really tracking that third party repairs and the warranty around it.
You've been watching or perhaps listening to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I'm your host, Jamie Irvin. We've been speaking with Renaldo Adler, head of software engineering connected maintenance at Trimble Transportation. We've been talking about the reasons you need better warranty tracking. This is something that's going to become more relevant as time goes on. If people would like to find out more about your company, what's your website, Renaldo?
Well, it's we're part of Trimble. If you go to tremble.com and then drill down under the business sector for transportation, you'll get in there. And we have products that really deal in the whole spectrum of transportation, whether it's from TMS products, which is the management of freight where it's going, to the maintenance of that truck and managing really the downtime of that vehicle and communicating that throughout your business.
All right.
The big dollars nowadays are out of service.
Right. So that's trimble.com.
Correct.
All right. So trimble.com. We'll make sure that goes in the show notes. This live broadcast is going to be rebroadcasted on the podcast, and the links will be there. Renaldo, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Jamie, for having me, and been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So that brings to conclusion another live stream, another live interview. It's interesting. Renaldo was talking about VMRS codes. Next week, we've got Jack Poster from TMC, who's going to be here. And of course, TMC is a Technology and Maintenance Council, part of the American Trucking Association. And guess what we're going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about VMRS codes and why parts companies need to have that information to better serve fleets. So tune in next week. We'll be talking about VMRS codes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.